We're going to talk about SAP data analytics in this unit. Now, this presentation was prepared by professors in other universities who are part of the Academic Alliances program. But I did add two graphics on this slide. One is the Moneyball, and the other is MBA. Okay, I'll talk about those just a minute. But in this unit, it has four major sections. So we have four learning goals. One is to describe the current and future SAP analytics technologies. And then we're going to talk about three of the technologies or software tools in some detail. So you should be able to summarize the main features of three of the tools. One is Analysis for Office, second is Lumira, and third is Predictive Analytics. Okay, I have Moneyball shown there because I think nowadays analytics is all the rage, but it's probably due in part to the novel and the movie Moneyball. Some of you probably remember that story is about using numbers or data to support business decisions. Okay, although in that case the decisions are more related to baseball games as opposed to running a retail store or manufacturing and so on. And I don't believe that people in the Moneyball story actually use SAP. Okay, but on the other hand, SAP does have a good relationship with MBA. So as a matter of fact, they created this website for MBA that shows all the stats a fan could want to see about their favorite players, their favorite teams, and so on. Okay, this is running using SAP technology. Okay, so this website is supported by SAP technologies. Okay, so let's take a look at them in some detail. First of all, when we talk about analytics, there are back-end and also there are front-end. Okay, just like in business intelligence that we've been talking about in this course, there's back-end, which actually in the case of SAP, the back-end can be in any SAP systems or non-SAP systems, social media content, unstructured content, and so on. Okay, so the backend is pretty much any data that a company can collect can be used as the source or the backend for analytics applications. Then you see in the middle, they have analytic capabilities. Remember I mentioned before that SAP uses different terms to refer to software basically. Okay, they've used solutions, capabilities, things like that, but they are essentially software tools. Okay, so under analytics, they have all kinds of software tools. Some of them are devoted to industry applications, line of business applications, enterprise performance management, GRC for accounting and auditing purposes, and so on. All right, and there's also a general business intelligence applications, as well as data warehouse management, which we have talked about in this course. Okay, so all of them are considered part of analytics capabilities. In contrast, way back in the first unit, I mentioned the two major categories of software. The first category is business applications that include ERP, CRM, supply chain management, and so on. Okay, so again, we have two types of software. One is for business applications, and the second type is for analytic applications, or as SAP calls them, analytic capabilities. Then on the front end, you have all kinds of tools, dashboards we've talked about, and then you can also have Microsoft Office, especially Excel as the front end that we will talk in some detail when we get into analysis for Office later on. Okay, and we can also use a regular browser or mobile device to access any data coming from the analytic application. So the landscape in terms of SAP products is like this. So again, on the back end, we have data sources. Okay, and again, data source can be SAP system, like from your SAP Business Suite, or non-SAP systems from the HANA database, from BW 7.3 and then 7.4 nowadays, of course. Okay, and then you create your analytic applications, which can then be consumed by the front-end tools. And from SAP, right now they have two major categories. Okay, one is from SAP Business Objects, which includes Web Intelligence, BACS, Analyzer. This is from SAP. This is the traditional front-end tool that is still being used today. Okay, and then you have Design Studio, Predictive Analytics, Explorer, Lumira, and so on. Okay, so then on the right-hand side, you have Crystal Solutions. So those tools or solutions are basically coming from the company that SAP acquired a few years ago, Crystal, I think, called Crystal Report first, and then they have several related products. Okay, and we've talked about dashboard design, and we're going to talk about Lumira and predictive analytics, and also analysis for Office in this unit. Okay. Then on this slide, it shows nicely that who is going to need what kind of training in terms of analytic skills. Okay, so right now, almost everybody in the business world. Okay, if you're a business user, line manager, or analyst, specialist, you will be part of the 97% of users that may be using an analytic application. Then some of you may become a data analyst. So if you are interested in analytic processing, you want to learn more about it, and you can use that not as part of your job, but as the main focus of your job, then you can become a data analyst. And then finally, for the smallest portion of users, we have data scientists. Okay, so these are highly trained, mostly statistical people who can build models from scratch and then analyze data using sophisticated methods and models to serve the need of other users. Okay, so they are data scientists. I think most people who have a degree from a College of Business will be either a regular business user or a data analyst. All right, so again, we have three types of users, or three types of personas. Okay, again, 97% about will be business users or executives, and how they will utilize analytic applications. And about 3% of you will be, can become a data analyst. Then these are the ways that you will be using analytic applications. And then finally, 0.1% will be data scientists. So understand the three types of personas will help us better understand the purpose or the position of different tools from SAP. Okay, so if you want to be a regular business user, or let's say a line of business manager or executive and so on, okay, then you'll be likely using embedded analytics that are created using tools such as SAP Lumira and also SAP Infinite Insight, which is a tool that from a company that SAP acquired. Okay, and that tool is now part of predictive analytics. So we'll be talking about predictive analytics later on, which will cover both Infinite Insight and also predictive analysis. Okay, so with those three tools, you can then, those three tools can then cover the needs of business users as well as business analysts. Okay. And for those of you who want to become a data scientist, then you would need to learn how to create a custom analytics. Then you need to learn the language R and be able to use SAP predictive analysis library, which are pre-built R routines that you can use to create your own applications. All right, so the skill sets require range from no to low to high. Okay, and I also kind of like the graphic up here that shows that even professors need to upgrade their skills if they want to teach the next generation of business users, business analysts, and so on. So then after you graduate and if you work in the analytic field, then here's a nice model that you can utilize to understand some of the common tasks that are involved in creating applications for analytics. This is 7-phase model, starting with data acquisition, and then data preparation, and then visualization, prediction, and then sharing, and so on. Okay. Also notice that those activities are iterative. It is not linear, which means that it's not in sequence. Okay, you can cycle back to earlier stages if necessary. For instance, after you visualize your data, you may go back and then modify your data to bring in additional data or analyze data in different ways to give you a better insight. Okay, so that's the model to follow in creating the actual application. Next, a little bit about the SAP BI roadmap. And again, I like the I guess caveat here, right? It says that no guarantee. So it's kind of like the long-term plan from SAP about what they have, what they currently have today. This is 2015, and then what they are planning on the horizon and also in the future. Okay, so right now, if you look at what they are offering for dashboards and applications, you have two major tools. One is SAP Business Objects Dashboards, which you have used in your first assignment. But the next one is called Design Studio. That's a newer tool for building dashboards. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. If in the future, if you are involved in building dashboards, okay, because that's what they plan to have for future dashboards. Then for discovery and analysis, they have Lumira, Business Objects Explorer, Business Objects Analysis for Microsoft Office, and then for OLAP, for set analysis and so on. Okay, and if you, as you can see in the middle there, in the future they will be focusing mostly on Lumira and also analysis for Microsoft Office. And now this one, addition for OLAP, is similar to the one for Microsoft Office. Okay, so we'll talk about the addition for Microsoft Office. Then you'll be able to use the OLAP version if necessary in your job. Okay, so we will cover, I guess, the majority of the tools that are used today and even in the near future. And also mentioned earlier that Infinity Insight is a tool from a company that SAP acquired some time ago. And SAP had a tool called Predictive Analysis for Analytic before. Now they are combining this tool into a single product called Predictive Analytics 2.0. Okay, this is what happened in February of 2015. And we'll be talking about this predictive analytics later on in this unit. So similarly, again, these two are now combined into predictive analytics. And also SAP Lumira is a separate product, but is also built into predictive analytics, as you will see later on. Okay, so with this tool, you can actually use both the predictive analytic capabilities as well as Lumira for data visualization. And then on the back end, you have all kinds of sources possible, including SAP HANA. Okay. So for the predictive analytics, they actually have two modes for two personas. Okay, one is called automatic, second is called expert mode. The expert mode, as the name implies, is used by people who are very skilled in building models to do analytic processing. Okay, so the main users are actually data scientists, but as you will see later on, your assignment actually uses the expert mode as well. So we can use the expert mode to create some simple applications as well. Okay, but overall, that is mainly used by data scientists to build sophisticated applications. Then the second mode is called automatic. This is used mainly by data analysts or even by regular business user, because a lot of the tasks have been automated, so it's more user friendly. But at the same time, it has limited extensibility, which means that you cannot create your own logic in the application. So the automatic mode actually is Infinity Insight. Okay, it used to be called Infinity Insight. It now is known as Automatic Analytics in SAP Predictive Analytics. Okay, so it's kind of confusing, but that's the tool that can be used by, as I mentioned earlier, that most business users. Okay, although our assignment actually will use the expert mode. And the expert mode or expert analytics used to be called SAP Predictive Analysis, and now it is called expert analytics. And as I mentioned earlier, that SAP Lumira is also part of the package. Okay, so if your company gets a license for predictive analytics, it actually comes with SAP Lumira, so that you can use that to build nice looking visualizations, which we'll talk more about later on. As an example, Lumira, this application is actually built and stored in Lumira Cloud. Okay, so there's a QR code. You can just scan it and go to the website, or you can just click on it. Let me see. Can I do that? Yeah. Again, this application was created using SAP Lumira and hosted in Lumira Cloud, so it can be accessed by anybody to look at the data and the results and so on. Okay, so this is a simple app to show the sales by year, months, and I think that's kind of like material. Okay, and if you can also use different filter, and then you can see the results change right away in the graphic. Okay, so you can explore this app on your own when you have time. There are tons of samples available from SAP website. This is just one of them. So Lumira, SAP Lumira actually has different delivery options. Okay, one you just saw is called Lumira Cloud. So everything is created and also accessed in the cloud. Okay, so you don't need anything else, just a web browser to do the development as well as to access the application later on. There's also a desktop version that you can get, and also your company can get. Actually, nowadays, SAP has trial version. No, not trial versions. They have their full versions of software for 30-day free trial for all the software tools. Okay, so you can download Lumira desktop. You can also download Lumira server to put it on your server computer, which can then be used by many users at the same time. Okay, so they have 3 versions of the software that you can try and experiment, and if you like it, you can then purchase a license later on. So again, every tool that they have nowadays comes with a 30-day free trial. And also, Lumira Cloud is the version we'll be using for your assignment. Okay, for that assignment, I ask everybody to get a free account from a Lumira Cloud so that you can build your application and then save the document there, all for free. Okay, it's pretty neat. So Lumira is the main visualization tools. Okay, but there's also other tools available, such as analysis for Office. I already talked about, and we'll look at in more detail later on, and also similar product analysis for OLAP, and then Explorer. Okay, Explorer is the most basic tool. It's the easiest to use, and Lumira is more sophisticated. Okay, so I guess if you learn Lumira well, you will be able to use Explorer. If for some reason your company has that available, then you can use that to produce reports, analyze data very easily. And again, we're talking about kind of like the roadmap for SAP, the planned convergence. In the future, you have different applications, I guess. All right, so how do we make sense of different tools? Look at your needs, okay, or requirements. Do you want to do reporting? Then they will recommend Crystal reports, web intelligence, desktop intelligence nowadays. Okay, in the future, they will move to Crystal reports and web intelligence. And let me see, for discovery and analysis, then you have all those tools nowadays. In the future, the main tool will be Lumira. And then for dashboards, I mentioned earlier that the next generation will be Design Studio. But dashboard design, I think, will still be used for quite some time. Okay, and then for Office integration, then of course you want to use analysis for Office. Now, this slide basically shows that again, we have different types of users, right? You have let me see, data analysts as well as data scientists. Okay, they are tasked to create applications which are consumed by other business users. Okay, so we're talking about applications that are professionally authored, and these are the attributes of those applications. Okay, very complex, sophisticated design, and the environment for development and consumption are separated. Okay. On the other hand, there are also applications that most business users can create themselves. So they are known as self-service applications. So business users, analysts, or even executives, okay, they can answer their own questions. So they can create applications for themselves. And the development and consumption environments are actually the single environment. And also a good news nowadays, important development is that SAP and ESRI have agreed to work together. So now ESRI data is available to SAP Lumira. Okay, some of you probably know that ESRI is a big GIS company. They have maps available. So in the near future, you'll be able to create Lumira visualizations with map data coming from ESRI. All right. Then here we have another, I guess, model to show how analytic applications can be developed. And here again, we have a caveat. Okay, this is in theory. It's a three-step process. You can load your data from any source. Okay, SAP, non-SAP systems, web data, database, and so on. The second step then is to discover, enrich, and visualize your result. Okay, this is done mostly through SAP Lumira. Okay, the nice graphics that you see here can be produced by Lumira. And then the third step is to apply predictive models. Then you can publish the results. Okay, but of course, in practice, there can be some wrinkles, complications that will take time and practice to improve your skills, to become a better analyst and users of applications. All right. Then the next two slides have a lot of useful resources. And each one of them is actually working. Okay, so if you click on any link, okay, like if you want to learn more about SAP Lumira, it takes you to the website where you have tons of tutorials that you can look at and learn to use this wonderful tool. Same thing with Business Objects Design Studio. Okay, we don't get into this tool here, but if you want to learn more in the future, you can do so. Business object analysis, similarly, so they have tutorials for all their tools on their website. Okay, additional resources for your self-study in the future.